ninepence.
I'm not dead.
What? Nothing. Here's your ninepence.
I'm not dead.
Here. He says he's not dead.
Yes, he is.
I'm not.
He isn't?
Well, he will be soon. He's very ill.
I'm getting better.
No, you're not. You'll be stone dead in a moment.
What's good, guys? So I just wanted to talk about this monetization director over at Ubisoft and this little tirade that he went on LinkedIn. It's an article from that Park Place. It really doesn't matter. I just wanted to find the post to be able to read it off. Anyways, Stevy Chassard here. I rarely post on social media, but today I am sad, ashamed and sad. The gaming industry is rough at the moment. We all know it, but seeing how gamers react on social media, wishing ill fate to companies and people alike is sad, and not only towards Ubisoft. Even though it is always the vocal minority that expresses themselves on social media, I was hurt and ashamed to be part of this community. What is even more revolting is coming on LinkedIn and seeing the same comments from people within the industry. On top of exposing yourself as a clearly non-decent human being, you are affecting thousands of employees that are already impacted by all the hate despite doing their best to deliver incredible experiences. How can you wish a company to fail simply because they do not cater to you or that the product does not please you is beyond me. We are all in the same boat. Please, please, please stop spreading hate. We should all uplift each other instead of bringing each other down. All right, first off, there's a few points that I want to address in here. Saying that we're in the same boat. I've seen this sentiment going around lately. Ubisoft, yeah, you're in a bad boat right now. Sony with Concord, definitely in a bad boat right now. Capcom's doing all right. FromSoft's doing all right. Nintendo's doing all right. It seems just to be a select few companies that are having the issues, and they're basically trying to spread the blame industry-wide so that they don't have to be accountable for the fact that it's really only what they're doing that's not working. Anyways, though, I digress. First off, talking about companies wishing to fail simply because they do not cater to you. Stevy, this game failed because it didn't cater to anybody. Star Wars Outlaws failed because it sold under 1 million units. If you're catering to somebody, you need to figure out who that is because they ain't coming up to bat for you. All right? If you're and the thing of it is if you're creating a product that is expensive as these games are, because Star Wars Outlaws was incredibly expensive. It had licensing fees, it had huge development costs. I guarantee you it had a huge marketing budget. The amount of money that's going into these games, if you're choosing not to cater to certain people, that's a huge problem. Because as much as these games cost, you need to cater to as wide a market as possible. So the fact that you're admitting that the games are not catering to people, that's a problem that you should be addressing, not just accepting as the reality of the situation. Now, I want to get into Stevy specifically, though, because I don't think it's all about what he says it's about. First off, I want to think that him sitting here saying, exposing yourself as not a decent human being, that has got to be the most non-self-aware statement that I've ever seen. Stevy is the monetization director at Ubisoft. He's the guy who wants to sell you the $130, version that has FOMO so that you pay double for a product that isn't worth the base entry fee. He's the type of guy that would try to sell you cosmetic skins. He's the type of guy that's going to try to get you to pay for an experience booster in a game so the game has to be designed to be more grindy so that you pay extra money to remove the grind. He's the type of guy that would create a game where every product was an NFT that people would be encouraged to transfer and sell amongst each other so that, Ubisoft could collect a cut of all of those transactions. Like, this dude is involved in some of the most heinous monetization schemes that Ubisoft has been involved in, and they've been creative in some of the ways that they've monetized. The fact that this guy is only ashamed by sentiments that are, really old, it just shows that he's not internalizing anything when it comes to shame. It's all external in what he's ashamed at. He's not ashamed that he is basically there to extract as much money from the consumer as possible without providing any value for that money. It just sounds very tone deaf, and it makes me think that this guy is representative of large swaths of people at these companies. Which makes me think that a lot of these development studios at Ubisoft probably aren't salvageable if they're filled with Stevies like this. I get that this is directed at other people in the industry, but at the same time, like, what's happened in his world that would cause him to do this at this point? Because let's be honest, we've been years now of people wishing ill will on these companies because of the type of products that they've been producing. And Ubisoft is probably the crown jewel of those wishes. So that's to say that there's nothing new that happened recently that would warrant this post on LinkedIn. What has happened recently? Well, Ubisoft has been forced to hit the oh shit button when Star Wars Outlaws sold under 1 million units. Now, before we get into why Star Wars Outlaws was the straw that broke the camel's back for Ubisoft, I think it's important that we revisit Skull and Bones. Now, I know Skull and Bones failed. I know Skull and Bones literally might have had development costs beyond even what Star Wars Outlaws and AC Shadows has had, just because it was such a troubled development. It went on for so long. There was governments involved. It was a mess. The product at the end wasn't very good. It had to make a lot of compromises that, diverted it from what its inspiration was from the beginning. So I think to a certain degree internally, they knew Skull and Bones was never going to produce what they would hope to produce. I think they had a lot of ample time to come to that conclusion, even when they're sitting there throwing out, it's the first quadruple A game. That's the type of extra stuff you say when you're trying to compensate for a product. I firmly believe they looked at that game and said, yeah, this probably ain't going to do well. We're going to have to take a loss on this one. Star Wars Outlaws, I don't think that was the case. I do believe they knew about a lot of its problems. I do believe they knew that its AI was broken as all get out, but they probably made the assessment that it's a Star Wars open world game. Yeah, we'll take a little hit for the quality, but we can fix that after launch, and Star Wars will carry it and it'll still sell well. That would just be how I think they theorized that transaction to go. When that one didn't do well, suddenly it's oh shit, because suddenly they switch into survival mode. They delayed AC Shadows, and what else did they do while they were in survival mode? Well, they said we're not going to have a bunch of different versions of the game. We're going to have one version. It's going to include the DLC if you pre-order, a DLC that they were likely going to try to monetize in those more expensive versions. And they decided, oh yeah, we're also going to day and date release on Steam finally, even though that's something we probably should have been doing for the past decade. So a lot of the things that Stevy did to provide value to his employer, or at least that he perceived was providing value to his employer, the second that his employer had to go into survival mode, all of that shit got thrown in the dumpster. And now Stevy is lashing out, basically using something that's been going on for years as a red herring for expressing his rage at this moment. The reason I don't think a lot of these companies can be saved is because there's no accountability in this post. Stevy's not even a creative. He's talking about incredible experiences. He doesn't create experiences. He just tries to piecemeal out experiences to get as many, ducats out of you as he possibly can. He's not involved in the creation whatsoever. He is a latch on to feed the corporate structure, and his corporate structure is no longer content with what he's been feeding them. So I think you look at this and you have to come to the conclusion that there is a lot of lashing out. A lot of people who have never had to account for the fact that what they do really isn't all that valuable are now forced to address that reality. And since some of them are just allergic to any self-reflection whatsoever, they're going to point the finger outward, as they always do. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this one. If you found this useful, you know all the stuff. Anyways, catch you next time. Until then, get awesome.